one small college town is taking a collective sigh of relief. Another is now in the spotlight for its connection to an alleged serial killer. Bryan Kohberger is accused of stabbing 4 University of Idaho students to death inside of their off-campus home. Kohberger was on the path toward a doctorate at nearby Washington State University, and students in Pullman, Washington began their spring semester on Monday. In fact, many told reporters that they had never felt unsafe in their town before now. Professors took part in trauma workshops to prepare for any stress that students might be dealing with. People who live and work a few miles away in Moscow, Idaho, say that they're proud of their police department's response to the rare crime.
Well, I think they got a lot of flack for keeping their cards tight to their chest, which I always felt like that's what they were doing. And so I was pretty elated when they caught this guy and all this evidence was revealed, and I felt like they needed to be thanked. It's been a big deal. I mean, I'm a little emotional just talking about it. You know, the students here are family to us. They're our customers, they're our friends, and it was such a tragic, horrible thing that happened that it affected us all very deeply.
As for Kohberger, his defense team is expected back in court for a status hearing on Thursday. After seeing the apparent mountain of evidence against Kohberger in the probable cause affidavit, we asked celebrity defense attorney Alan Dershowitz how would he handle a case like this.
Every case is different and every defense is different. I am always opposed to lawyers who say, I always do it this way. I always put the client on the stand. I never put the client on the stand. Remember, too, the affidavit only presents one side of the story. It's only the prosecution's version. Mm-hmm. You have to begin to develop your own evidence. And I'm going to surprise people when I say that a good criminal defense lawyer always starts with a presumption of guilt, not a presumption of innocence. You always assume your client is guilty, and then you work back from there. If you assume your client is innocent, you'll make mistakes. You'll allow searches. You'll allow him to speak to the police. So you always start with a presumption of guilt and then try to develop evidence that questions or challenges.
Bryan, you're the resident defense attorney. You agree with Mr. Dershowitz? Would you have a similar game plan, presumption of guilt?
I guess according to Dershowitz, I'm not a good defense attorney. Every defense attorney does it differently. I don't buy into that. I think I maybe do something a little similar. I go with the presumption of innocence, but the prosecution's case is the strongest thing against him. And I think if you look at it that way, we're saying, hey, I believe my guy is innocent, and I'm just talking about cases where I know I got to go to trial. I'm not talking about negotiating pleas, but if it's a trial case, I go with the assumption that my client is innocent, but the prosecution has the strongest case in the world. And if you go with that mindset, you fight a little bit harder to try to disprove their case. Of course, if you can't disprove their case, then you're looking to try to negotiate. But in a case like this, if you presume that your client is guilty, I don't think you're going to be working as hard. But I understand what he's saying. You got to really attack the prosecution's case, thinking that it is stronger than anything else that you can see.
So, Terry, let's assume the worst for Kohberger. Let's say his defense strategy loses, it doesn't work. The jury then is going to maybe have to decide the issue of the death penalty if it's pursued by prosecutors. Do you think a jury would impose the death penalty in this kind of case?
You know, that's a really tough question. We know that the prosecution has asked for the death penalty, but that doesn't mean that they're going to have a jury that's going to actually execute on that. So basically, you're going to have to make sure you are selecting jurors who don't have any sort of opposition to the death penalty. And it obviously has to be unanimous. They're going to go through aggravating circumstances. They're going to go through mitigating circumstances and try to determine whether or not one outweighs the other. And if you get just one juror who doesn't agree, you're not going to get the death penalty. And we've seen this, again, I'm mentioning the Parkland shooter case. We absolutely thought, many people thought, that that was going to be a death penalty case. And at the end of the day, the jury didn't have a unanimous decision as far as that was concerned. So we got life in prison there. And something like that could happen here, even if there is a conviction. It's a heinous crime, but there's no guarantee that an entire jury is going to agree to that.
Yeah, you can sometimes predict, how a jury is going to weigh in terms of guilt or not guilty, but death penalty, I agree with you, sometimes so unpredictable. Bryan, Terry, thanks so much. Great work. We're going to see you next time, everybody, as we discuss justice in America.